Well, welcome everyone to today's Aquarian Series meeting put on by the ULT in San Diego. And these are meetings on various theosophical topics, often concentrating on special times of the year. And the second object, you could say, they are also on general theosophical topics, and many of them are the application of universal brotherhood in everyday life. Which is the case, I would say, in our presentation today, Friendship in a World of Flux, Maitri and Maya. And many of you may have received the article that was written by Professor Nandini Iyer called that, Friendship in a World of Flux. And Carolyn Dorrance, Dr. Carolyn Dorrance is our speaker today, and she will explain the context of that article, I'm sure, and bring out many of the points within that article, which should facilitate rich points of discussion about a wonderful topic, which is that of friendship. Without further ado, I will introduce Dr. Carolyn Dorrance, and she is a longtime student of theosophy and a longtime friend of mine. So Carolyn, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, thank you. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're keeping your mind on higher themes than the weather, but and I hope that you will find this talk on friendship, which seems to some as kind of an ordinary thing, but we're privileged to hear the thoughts of Professor Nandini Iyer. She first gave this as a talk to students graduating from Kate School in Carpinteria. And that says a lot that she is a professor at Oxford, at UCSB in philosophy and religious studies, and giving talks all over the world. She would think it very worthy of attention to talk to these graduating students about friendship. And lest you start thinking about your memories of friendship when you were 10 years old and playing games with your friends, you will find that she is looking at a much different level and depth of friendship. And I'll just read to you, I totally recommend that you read the talk was published by Concord Grove Press in 1988, and it's about to be republished in a tribute to her, along with many other articles. So she starts off, and you can see the breadth, depth, and points of her approach by saying, she quotes Shakespeare's Hamlet, where Polonius advises his son, "The friends thou hast and their adoption tried, grapple them to thy soul with hoops of steel." And then she says, "Tried and trusted friends are among the most precious gifts a human being has, and all friendships must be cherished and protected as invaluable and irreplaceable elements in our lives. Friendship, the oldest of all social relationships, is part of the very essence of what it means to be human. Quote, one's friends are that part of the human race with which one can be human, said Santayana, American philosopher, late 19th century. Without it, life loses its joy. Part of Cicero wrote, what sweetness is left in life if you take away friendship? Robbing life of friendship is like robbing the world of the sun. So there's something very precious about friendship, and it's very much an innate capacity in every human being. That it's the oldest of social relations is interesting. We might think something like marriage or in education is the oldest of all social relations, but you might have some thoughts on that. And it's developed in a important way in the late adolescence at school, where we developed the talent of making and keeping friends. And that provides us the strength, the comfort, the security, the counsel that are at the very core of friendship for the rest of your life. Because when you're that age, you are still flexible in thought and behavior. So although you might have been brought up in some rather restrictive or narrow context, it's during this time that you can expand very much your perspective and your values. Friendship, she says, is a talent, a capacity that, again, all have innately, but may be very confused as to what constitutes a true friend. She definitely says that it's not a question, true friendship is not just a pathway to having fun, nor is it a pathway to engaging what's mischievous, what's disorderly. You might have, if you're honest, some memories of when you weren't the best behaved child around. But it's neither a puritanical goodness nor a lawless badness. There's room for give and take of jokes, but friendship is actually most needed when we are facing some kind of perplexing problem, and that we are unsure of our own judgment, and we're honest enough to recognize that. We need advice when we are in a bind of fix. And friends show their true worth in times of trial and difficulty. And they show that true worth in a way that gives trust. So you recognize, if you're the recipient of someone's friendly overtures, you can feel that they are genuinely concerned about your welfare. And you trust a friend's judgment because you know it comes out of deep deliberation, not hasty, and not just kind of limited concern. And this can only happen if a friend encourages honesty and maturity. So you might want to keep that in mind, that friendship has something to do with your development, your growth, your expansion of perspective. And it does let you help another person, but not try to make them into a copy of yourself. The essence of true friendship is that each individual remains himself. On the other hand, a true friend can help you grow. A true friend can understand and recognize changes that come into an individual. So there's a bit of a paradox here. Friendship strengthens and gives identity to you. On the other hand, it is compatible with changes that come as you experience life and think about life and listen to a friend. So it's not static. It's not some kind of static thing. You're not supposed to become a copy of somebody else. In fact, there needs to be some space between friends for them to grow. A relationship or friendship is creative, not stifling. And so even it allows for differences of opinion, of temperament, of talent, and outlook. So that's important. There has to be space between friends, but yet trust that can be quite serious and draws out deeper, more hidden aspects of each other, or it can be larger than just two people or something. So while you remain yourself, your friend becomes a catalyst that changes you for the better, because friendship should help bring out our strengths, not our weaknesses. A friend may see and bring out hidden gifts that you yourself don't see in yourself and strengthen them. She uses, as she often does in her teaching, a metaphor that every human being is like a hidden diamond, possessing an innate worth that needs to be developed, discovered, cleaned, polished, faceted. So a hidden diamond. And if those qualities are brought out, then you can become a reflection of the light of the soul and will show the brilliance that a diamond is associated with. So only in a trustful security of a friendship that people show themselves as they truly are, gifts and deficiencies, you become courageous enough to face one's innermost self. And that's an important idea. And you really can't draw out your innermost self without friendship. You need other people to help you see yourself as you are. And so true friends act as a mirror in which you can see the real face of yourself without deceptive masks, which we typically socially developed even when we're 6 years old. So there's again another kind of paradox here, that you become by letting your qualities manifest, you become a much more real and authentic human being. And all the deceptive masks of social interaction are dissolved. So friendship is the road to self-discovery. And without self-knowledge, there's a big list of what will be missing in your growth in your life. You cannot grow as an individual, as a human being. You cannot have knowledge of others. You cannot become a whole human being linked dynamically to the world. You cannot reach out to others. And you cannot escape the bonds of egocentrism and prejudice. That's a pretty big agenda. And that friendship, which we might think is just a little casual bond between people or activity. No, Professor Iyer is saying all the most important values and goals in your life depend upon some degree of friendship. So this friendship allows us to grow and mature and resist the instinct of the insecure, who try to avoid recognizing differences in perhaps what your self-image is and what your true qualities are. And this is not a bad thing. She does go into the need very much to overcome insecurity, and that building of confidence and this willingness to experiment in life and to try to change those qualities that are some obstacles to just your own accomplishments, to your own joy, to your own discovery of how friends are so valuable. And all of that requires overcoming any kind of insecurities, which then we try to cover up and therefore never kind of get on the right track. I can explore through friendship a wider universe of human beings, enlarge and deepen my experiences of life and my insights into excellence. And Professor Iyer is very optimistic about your ability to develop the finest qualities that a human being is capable of. And very importantly and interestingly, she says that you can cope with the fact that others have more gifts than you do in some respects. And the greatest gift, so you should be able to to accept that and treasure that. The greatest gift that a human being can show is spiritual generosity, in which you give admiration for others' accomplishments and qualities without any hint of envy, stint. Instead, you rejoice from the depths of your heart because someone else has won success and acclaim. This lack of disruptiveness is vital, she says. She moves on now after a general analysis of friendship to the importance of school friendships. She is again talking to a graduating class of a prep school. So you can, it's in this time that you can, that you really begin to work to kind of get along, to discover, excuse me, and become a friend to others. And there shouldn't be any imprisonment in a false friendship, no weakening of others. We might have encountered at some point someone's using the veneer of friendship to actually trap others, manipulate others, increase their insecurities. And this all obviously is destructive of true human growth and manifestation of the best qualities. So this is all too common at that age. We probably all encountered examples of whether it's of deception, of manipulation in that gossip, et cetera, in that that period of life, in the name of becoming buddies with somebody, but not authentically working for their becoming a true diamond. Now, she then goes on to say that friendship's not just an emotional tie. It basically does involve emotion, but it should not be indulgent, exaggerated. It's a very bad trait to become kind of too aggressive. This friendship, yes, you can hug, but not too much, so to speak. So because emotions, if overindulged in, is destructive of oneself and of friendship. It becomes a subtle kind of emotional terrorism, she says, blackmail, at a time when young people may not really recognize what's happening. So you need and get the benefit in the school of a counterbalance. A rich intellectual atmosphere acts as a charm against vampirism. You use a friend more properly. Maybe the word use isn't the best, but a friend, through a friend and a friendship, you can encourage the discussion of ideas. And that's very important at this stage in life, because the ideas you begin with maybe at a very simple level, become more complex as you go on living your life, but that's actually a more authentic development of really what the world is like. She says, aside from, so you can trust in your friend if they encourage you to try out your ideas, and you can bring in plays, novels, poems, art, films. They start your mind working on a train of ideas that you want to talk about. And so that's part of friendship, talking about, doesn't have to be exactly, a Shakespearean play, but some idea in that may lead to more imagination and more elaboration. An idea in philosophy or religion fires your imagination perhaps quite suddenly. It makes you see life, yourself, or other people differently. You may think of a scientific theory for the future of humanity. And the more you realize that your friends in school helped you give birth to mold an infant idea, grow into a complex theory. And so this is why some of the most brilliant insights in mathematics and science may show themselves in your early 20s, but they're not just brand new. There might have been 7 or 8 years of gestation. So the tossing to and fro, as she puts it, is an essential element in intellectual development. The mind is sharpened. And of course, the sharpening of the mind gives a counterbalance to the emotions that were spoken of earlier. With friends, we can begin to venture on the great adventures of an idea. An example you might think of is tolerance. That's one that might come up in this stage of life. Nonviolence. We hear these words perhaps in the classroom, perhaps just in the environment of a school, or perhaps it's from some connection to what's going on in the world. And these words can be focused on and give birth to many subsidiary ideas. And that's part of the environment of friendship. Different kinds of friends that she mentions are actually the books, the music, the poems, the art that we encounter. And it may be in the classroom, it may be in an informal setting, it may be a class trip to a museum. So books and other such resources can be our friends. It isn't just other human beings, which of course is important. And they may express an idea, an insight, a profound emotion far better than you ever had experience. So these sources, these intellectual sources, these artistic sources, strike a chord in your conscience. And you may well remember some poem, some painting, some dialogue that really made an impression on you, and you still can go back to it. It gives you more sympathy to see the truth, and it can be renewed. She makes that interesting point that you can go back at age 50 or something and reread a book that you read when you were in school. And she's encountered many people who have had that experience, that they get a fresh renewal in mind and spirit. Books are like familiar friends, offering consolation and counsel in terms of trial. Friends are helpful because they truly tried to study a resource and penetrate its meaning. In other words, some among you have actually done their homework, and they've actually thought about whatever it is they were studying or watching, and they've actually tried to penetrate the meaning, which is what makes the dialogue between friends more meaningful and more influential. To try and excel in your student work, to penetrate into the meaning, is not to sell out the system. Interesting point to make to young people who might bear some negative approach to being in school, and I have to be here and all of that. Or hears about the corruption in the world. No, you're not. If you try to use well your opportunity to learn in school, you're not selling out to the system, and you're not losing one's freedom. And that might be worthy of some discussion. So by studying particularly what we call the liberal arts curriculum, well-roundedness is the work of a mature and cultivated person. And that's just central to her whole point. Is your goal is to become a mature and cultivated person with a manifestation of many fine human traits. But she says no excellence is achieved without straining for it with effort. There's no easy way, so to speak. Clear thinking, an appreciation of the virtues of the mind and of the spirit, all are important. So this these are the qualities that are the pathway to a far broader and deeper understanding of reality and of experience and of what is most valuable. She quotes Socrates, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And she then goes on to raise a question which she doesn't necessarily answer, but one has to find an answer to. What are the standards by which we judge ourselves? I mean, so, okay, we're going to make an effort. We're going to try to develop a clear thinking and understand the virtues of the mind and the spirit. But what are the standards that we use to judge our effort? Because to some extent, we do have to be provide our own report card. And she mentions as characteristics of intellectual excellence, clarity, relevance, analytical abilities. They themselves are a friend that you can rely on all your life. So that's, it isn't just another human being. As you finish school and move on, you're going to be more on your own, perhaps. And so if you have the qualities of good thinking, quality of clarity, analytical abilities, that will be a source of a kind of friendship. And to think clearly is to act skillfully. All of this effort that has been mentioned is exactly what we need in practice. And skill in action is very much part of the fruit of friendship. Intellectual skills provide the ballast, the balance, the equilibrium, and the moderation which prevent friendships from being wrecked. Again, there's a kind of discipline and self-restraint that is built into and felt as part of a true friendship. A person, and this is very provocative, a person who is merely intellectually brilliant but doesn't develop the art of friendship may not make a deep contribution to the welfare of the human race. And how many times have we encountered that? Somebody who's very bright and in a sense very coherent, but has no sense of service to humanity, no sense of working for the welfare of others, because they haven't developed human relationships that are characterized as friendship. So the disciplined mind will provide the necessary spaces, give a generous distance, as well as closeness, fruitful silence, and respect for privacy, as well as a speech. You can see again another other paradoxes at work here. One wants to seek creative quietude as well as activity. And that might be indirectly in interaction with others, and it might be when one is putting some distance, maybe through a meditation, something like that, that helps give strength to assimilation. Academic excellence should make you more capable and enduring of friendships. And she also mentions, which I'm sure there were parents in the audience who appreciated this, that parents and teachers can be included in your circle of friendship. And she gives some examples. And former students, she mentions how she developed friendships with teachers and with her own students who were 20 years younger than she was. But she kept in touch with them, but there was something about their relationship that was worthy of continuity. Above all, our friendships bring out the best in us, develop us in an all-around way, show what it is to be truly human. Through friendships, we can move beyond the narrow circle of selfhood to reach out to others in effective understanding and sympathy. Friends are the symbols, the representatives in our lives of the whole of humanity. There's something to kind of ponder. You go beyond close friends to draw larger and larger circles to others. You develop deeper concerns until the boundaries of friend and foe vanish, disappear. So this is obviously, we're talking about more than friendships developed in high school. We're talking about a lifelong process of expanding our concern for others, our friendships with others. So there's no more boundary between friend and foe. You can find the value of friendship with those you thought were foes. Great teachers tell us that in the end, we must love everyone. Friends are an indispensable bridge to this exalted state. So in a way, she's now reaching to the teaching of superior, the spiritual path. So she quotes from a mystical text, no man is your enemy, no man is your friend, all alike are your teachers. We learn from both of those we like and those we don't really like because we think we're too different. We learn tolerance, respect, and love for all. So friendship offers invaluable lessons. The more we love, the more alive we are, and the more we are actualizing what is innate in us, our true selves. So I think that kind of gives the high points of her remarkable essay that I found as I was reading it and rereading it. A lot of questions started to come up. It's a complex phenomena, you might say, and so worthy of a great deal of thought, which both calls our attention to something very immediate, but points us towards something very universal and very fundamental to improving the quality of life for everyone on the planet. So we'll stop there.
Thank you for a wonderful exposition of a remarkable essay. What you said reminds me of a quotation from Hamlet. He says to his friend Horatio, "If I could find a man who was not passion's slave, I would hold him in my heart, yea, in my heart of hearts, as I do thee." And after having read and seen this play so many times, I think how important a line that is, that a prince says that to a nobleman, his fellow student, but he's clearly his inferior on one level. He's not a prince, but everyone else in the play really is not Hamlet's friend. I mean, he has a girlfriend, but she's kind of dumb and passive. His mother is essentially attracted to the uncle that murdered his father. His father's an entity from Kamaloka. But Horatio is true through everything. I mean, Hamlet seems crazy. He's calculating. He's suicidal, but Horatio is true to him. He's honest with him. And is there something that is so important about this friendship, and that Horatio is not passion's slave? He doesn't have a bunch of desires that are going to be fulfilled by his friendship with a prince. A lot of people would take advantage of that, but Horatio does not. Polonius, of course, is so hoping he'll marry Ophelia, who is his inferior. He's not going to marry Ophelia. He's just playing with her. So I wonder if you could say something about passion and desire in relation to friendship, because I found that my real friends will honestly tell me, hey, you're messing up on this. You shouldn't be doing this, or this fellow is not right for you. You should cut off that relationship. That a real friend will be honest enough to even risk losing the friendship, because they're not going to play to your baser desires. And I think Horatio is that way with Hamlet. And in the end, he's the only one left alive on the stage, which I think is very important message that Shakespeare's sending too.
And qualified to inherit some leadership. Well, for that comment, and perhaps I didn't stress enough that Professor Iyer very much thinks that a friend must have the courage to point to deficiencies in their friend. And so that has to be part of the openness, but it's done with, again, love and concern for the welfare of the person that they're commenting on. So how many of us can listen to the critiques of another without getting all upset and just not listening with at least a willingness to give thought? And particularly because most of the comments that are somewhat negative might be comments about the personality, or they might be comments about ideas and habits that a person has inherited from their family, their social environment. We're hearing stories now about when we're going through this revelation of January 6th, that of people who thought it was okay, and then kind of come to see that who the instigator is, and why did they assume that it was a patriotic thing to do, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's important that we be honest and find a nonviolent way to suggest to a friend, well, maybe this habit or this attitude or this idea isn't something we want to get involved in. So, yeah, it's very complicated, actually. I think that's the gist, the overall gist of Professor Iyer's analysis is friendship is dynamic, but it is complex because ideas get revealed, or habits get revealed that someone hasn't thought about, and so that they have to kind of go through a pretty steep process of learning what the critic is trying to tell them.
Thank you.
comments on that question.
Robert has his hand up. Maybe he wants to be your friend.
I hope he is my friend.
Yeah, I hope so too. I just wonder what your thought, what, I could just make a comment also that like Plato considered friendship one of the principles that holds the universe together, just by the by. But I was wondering what your thoughts are on friendship in relation to reincarnation. Like we've lived many lives. So, you know, we've had a lot of relationships. And then of course, we're making the ground for relationships in the future. So I just wondered what your thoughts were about friendship and reincarnation.
That's a pretty big question.
Yeah, I just wonder what your own thoughts were though.
What I think I've discovered is there are things, there are reactions to people, there are responses to something we see in the news or whatever that don't seem to fit into our perspective, into our experience. And so remembering that karma exists, and karma is extremely broad in its scope, and karma includes experiences from previous lives that you don't know about. But it seems a little unfair, but it is a truth that just should make us more, I think, bring in the word humility. And bring to humility and maybe some tentativeness to our responses. I mean, for instance, somehow somebody seems to have some animosity towards us, or somebody on the other hand may have, as mentioned, some great talent that we don't have, or we think we respond to very positively. You know, if we just kind of keep the door open that, well, this might be an experience I had before, or this might be a person I was. And I don't want to overdo this because you're not in a position always of knowledge. One can have an experience that seems to be a reminiscence of something that might have happened before, but one doesn't want to be presumptuous, and one doesn't want to talk about it a lot. But maybe that's something at some point, there's some mystery to your experience, and maybe that is something that you would talk out with a true friend that you trust, and they would give you some perspective. They can't tell you factually, well, you were this and you did that in a previous life, but they can make suggestions about how to respond. I actually think that karma and reincarnation are extremely helpful in giving at least a perspective on what the source of your attitudes or experience are. And is part of the reason why the advice is given by not just Professor Iyer here, that your foe may not really be a foe. Maybe there's just some kind of misunderstanding, or you're just taking too narrow a view of the behavior of that so-called foe. So I think it can be very helpful without pushing the boundaries of presumption, to consider those ideas as foundational to all our experience. Maybe somebody else wants to speak to that.
It looks like Jim has his hand up.
Okay, Jim.
Well, it's quite a wonderful quintessence, Carolyn, that you gave us in terms of the essence of friendship. And it seems like it's in the broad sense, friendship is almost the one relationship in which there is a natural quality of equality, that there is no real fundamental concern with class or condition or merit or demerit. There's a sense in which those fluctuations don't really matter that much with friendship because of the fundamental nature of the trust. And I'm reminded of the hymn to Vok, where this is marvelous hymn. If some of you have not read it, it's just so exquisite. But where the very essence of the great enlightened beings gave birth to language through the pristine purity of love. And one of the things they mention is that friends acknowledge the essence of friendship. Upon their speech was the mark of grace. And so there's something about friendship that when there is that when someone is in need or in trouble, that unconditional element there allows them to come out use speech. I don't know quite if this is how much sense this makes, but there's something about the quality of speech in a friendship that's somehow restorative. It brings about healing. You have a certain way with words and language that harkens to something very deep, and you're able to use language in such a way that it is healing, and it brings a kind of understanding to people. Remember, she mentions about self-knowledge. Friends are very good about self-knowledge. No, you're a rascal there, or no, you were rather extraordinary there. Don't worry about what other people said. I'm telling you, that was really marvelous what you did. So you can gain, that kind of thing. And my question kind of to you, Carolyn, would be this. Is there something about this wonderful dynamic of equality and the grace that comes with using language in such a way that it enriches a relationship? Is this a reflection of the fundamental primordial relationship of the relationship between a teacher and a student in the spiritual sense? Is there something here being reflected? A fundamental quality. Yeah.
You've got 3 questions built into that. And I'll add another point. Yes, as you were speaking, the word that came to mind was spontaneity. Friendships develop with what appears to be spontaneity. Now, you could say, well, it's karma. I'm at school and I meet somebody that actually, I don't know it, but, I was closely involved in a previous life, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that's getting a little further than your knowledge. But what's really important is that there's a spontaneity to the experience. And it's a spontaneity which no tyrant, no government, no gossipy neighbor can stop. They can try to interfere with it. Well, I don't want my son trying to get involved with that girl, et cetera. But I think you're onto something with saying that there's something natural. It's a relation. And then maybe that's why she mentions that friendship is the oldest social relationship, which is kind of an idea that stuck out because you wouldn't think of friendship necessarily, but as the oldest social relationship. But there is a spontaneity in which they develop, and that's its power to nourish equality. It can happen to anybody, anytime, so to speak, that you suddenly have this feeling of friendship for a particular person or a group of persons or whatever. So yes, I think there's, and anybody, if you look around, the 8 billion people, anybody can develop a friendship, experience a friendship. So that's an equality that goes, that can't be prevented by, status and money and all the rest. And this is sometimes why quite a rich person encounters somebody who's not rich and just can nourish a genuine and joyful relationship of
Yeah, yeah.
communication. The other thing about communication, yes, I don't think it's only communication, but language does help. Language we know can be destructive, but language can be constructive. And maybe that has to be learned. Remember, it says, she says that friendship is a talent that you learn how to develop and use. And so controlling your language or seeing that, too much informality, too much slang or something is that prevents the development of healthy friendship. So I think that is a good idea. And also that's why books and plays and, can continue to be sources of friendship because they obviously are instruments of communication. So I think, and then this is kind of, I guess, maybe the teacher-pupil relationship. I thought of that as being very important within the, and maybe it's second to friendship as a social relationship, but you, at some point, friendship can at some point be beyond words because it's developed, the feeling is there, and it's been developed and matured. So you don't talk as much as you did when you were in high school. You're 40 years old and, you have a friendship that doesn't need too much speech. So that might be.
That's an excellent point. It's a very good point. And speak on that, just building on that for just a second. There's a wonderful phrase in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna at one point says, I'm revealing this to you because you are my devotee and my friend. And that's the very language that he uses. You are my devotee and my friend.
Yeah.
And that just gives a whole wonderful, a moment there where there's no difference in some deep sense. There's no difference in the more fundamental metaphysical spiritual sense. But also you remind me of something when you were speaking there. I'll just leave it at this, but Garth Wood, who wrote this incredible, psychiatrist who wrote this incredible book decades ago that got banned in Britain, it got banned in America, about the illness excuse of the myth of neurosis. And one of the things he says, look, why spend all this money going to psychologists and so forth? There are only really two fundamental psychological illnesses that really exist. Everything else can be cured by a good friend, because what most people need is moral therapy. And who better than a friend who's unconditional and will be truthful with you when others will not, and has no motive for money or gain or impression or anything of the sort. So if you go to a friend and tell them the problem, you're liable to get a more honest answer and better advice than if you pay someone. So he just sets out this wonderful whole approach that got him, and got so many people cross with him. But yeah, it shows you the true friendship can be many things, including giving us tremendous insight. And that's so helpful to building relationships other than our friendship.
That suggests that you might say modes of friendship and the language of friendship and the how the friendship maybe expresses itself can change over time as social values or social, not so much social values, but social, the context changes. So we, sometimes you read an article on what young people are doing, what they value, and people say, hey, they're just sitting around, they're not doing anything, or they're just talking all this jargon. But it may be a significant change. And I meant to include in my comments a short report on an interview that was on one of the news programs about why is this violence happening? Why are people going out and shooting 8 people, 17 people? Don't they see how wrong it is? And the one point of view that's being developed is it's not that they have a mental health program. There's a kind of a counter point to that whole thing of, oh, it's mental health and we need to have more therapy and stuff like that. It's basically what they've studied, and researchers have studied very thoroughly, particularly in it's young men between 15 and 25 who are doing these acts. They're lonely.
Yeah.
They don't have a good family situation. They may not have a parent is missing. They don't have any friends that they've developed in school. Maybe they've been bullied, or maybe it's just something they're shy. And acknowledging that some of the people who do these horrible things are just plain filled with evil. The interviewers who were interviewed didn't want to exclude that, but they said the most dominant characteristic of these shooters is that they're lonely. They don't have relationships with women, of either full relationships or partial relationships. They don't have a mentor. They don't have a buddy. And I remember one of the shootings, I think was in Indiana. The guy was home. It was a Friday night or something. He was just watching TV. It was 11 o'clock at night. He was feeling kind of bored and isolated. He picked up a gun and went down to a factory that he knew there was a night shift and that he had worked there, and started shooting people because he was acting out his loneliness. So, and then the person went on to say that we have a culture that doesn't really encourage people reaching out and trying to include people in whatever activity or they're doing. So I know some people I know, including myself. I can remember at high school, one of the big instruments of inclusion was the Saturday night sock hop. Everybody was encouraged to come to the sock hop where there was a DJ, and it didn't matter, who you are or what kind of student you were or whatever, you were included. And so, and you'd get, you'd go home with some sense of belonging. So those are all very helpful comments.
I'm waiting for someone else to jump in, but I want to make a point here about what Carolyn just said. It's interesting that they're discovering what a high school student in Moscow said, going back way back when we first had this occur several years ago. Remember, what's the name of that high school when it first occurred? We had this.
Columbine?
Say it again.
Columbine, I think, in
Yes,
Colorado.
yes, it was Columbine.
Yeah.
They interviewed a senior in high school in Russia, in Moscow. And she said, I have to tell you, we were so shocked here in our school that this happened in America. We could not understand it. We got together and we talked about it. And what we found was this. The reason this happens is because people are isolated from each other and lonely. In our school system, when we go through it, we all eventually know each other. And we have been encouraged from an early age. If we see someone with a problem and we can't help them as a friend, we go right away to our counselor or our principal. And it's not punitive. They contact the parent and they have a private conversation with them, that their fellow students notice something. And it was something that they didn't seem to be able to know what to do about. And so you would never have gotten, she said, you would never have gotten as far as this fellow did, because too many people would have noticed it. Too many people would have approached him. What's the problem? Why are you so depressed? Why are you so lonely? We would have tried to pick him up. We would have tried to include him. So the only thing we can conclude here among us seniors is that you people don't connect. People become isolated. And she said that would never happen here. We don't have these kind of problems for that reason. I thought, man, what a brilliant analysis that this is high school student telling us what our fundamental problem is.
Mhm. Interesting.
Anthony, did you have anything?
Thank you, Dr. Dorrance, for that wonderful talk. I don't know if my question carries the thread of the current conversation, but please, could you please give me or us your opinion of the Facebook friend? Is it true? Are there some elements of true friendship there, or is it just a networking ploy? Or what are your thoughts on Facebook friends and Twitter and Instagram and the social media?
Well, I should disqualify myself because I've never been on Facebook.
Oh.
But my intuition says it's both. There are Facebook and all these internet connections, amazing in the sense that you can talk to somebody in Japan or Brazil or what. I mean, you can talk to people all over the world. And there might be some real friendships that develop. You could argue that unless you have some sort of physical contact, like you do in high school, that makes it better, or there's an interaction. When two people are standing in the same room together, there can be an interaction of forces that you just don't get on through technology. So I'll leave somebody else to answer. But there's also can be very dangerous, because people can say anything they want to say. They can have an anonymous, face they're putting forth, and it doesn't, it's like the hug theory. At some point, and I don't think it has to be taken literally, but in some people need to feel, the presence, their persona, the values of other people. And Facebook, you could argue, and this is what's actually under debate, does all these Facebook images and comments. I mean, we know that there are people who have committed suicide after they read what was posted on the internet, and the people who posted it kind of think they can get away with it because they're not close to, the police or whoever it is. So I think it's I don't even just say it's a mixed bag, because it's an intense problem. And I think parents need to monitor and shut off the computer, maybe an hour or two or something like that. It is a source of human interaction that we have yet to understand and respond to. It would be my opinion, but that's, as I say, not an informed opinion. It's just an impression. So if somebody else want to answer that question, is Facebook part of the problem? Is it blocking friendships, or is it actually nourishing friendships? It can be exciting, there's no doubt.
Well, Desiree has her hand up. I'm not sure if she was going to address that.
Hi, Caroline. Thank you for that presentation. You mentioned that you can also become sort of friends with books, right? And I was thinking when you said that, there's so many times that I've read something and I felt such a camaraderie with the author that I would literally start debating and talking. And there was like this dialogue going on with the book.
Yeah.
I've done that quite a few times. And I'm wondering, did you ever find yourself in that similar situation? And are we in a sort of developing these friendships, but their friendships are really about ideas?
Yeah. Yeah, doing the dishes is a great place to suddenly have ideas come come to you that about something you read or something what I just mentioned about these experts saying that the cause of the mass shootings is not mental illness in the physiological sense, it's cultural. Those ideas, you may. I'm still thinking about those interviews, and they pop up at different times. So yes, I think, and it can be it sometimes strangely it can be something that you're remembering. I remember something that my high school English teacher said about Shakespeare. Every once in a while it pops up, and and then you kind of have a new perspective on it. So no, I think that's part of the freedom. I would say that's part of the freedom we have, which is why it's so tragic if people, just get stuck and, they're going to watch some program on TV and that's all they do. We have the freedom to not only explore, to mix and blend ideas. If you really start trying to let the human potential flourish, it's just an amazing what we can discover. So I think you're right on. Don't worry.
I also think that even though a person's passed on, I still feel I feel a connection, a kind of a camaraderie with that person, but not as a person, as an idea. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does, because that's what I experienced by coming back and reading this article, which I did first read at the time in the 80s when she gave the lecture. But then I started thinking not just about Mrs. Iyer, who passed away just about a year ago, but something she valued, or and so you might say she became part of my contemplation, so to speak. And that's you can do that with a letter you get from somebody or whatever. So I think there's all kinds of extensions from reading her ideas to remembering something very much. I mean, this is how many university professors would take the time to write and she always wrote out her talks, to a small prep school in Carpinteria, California. But she did, she put as much into this, I think, if she were about to prepare a paper for some famous professor in Oxford or something like that. So I hope they listened and they're making good use of what they learned from her. It's certainly a lot more than just trying to say, well, work hard, you can succeed, and all of that. It was just a completely different approach to a graduation speech. And it's because you can sense the integrity of what she is thinking out for them.
Well, thank you, Carolyn, so very much. One of the things that I noticed, or not noticed, but just soaked in for 35 years of, learning from Nandini Iyer, was not only was she a master metaphysician, for sure, and a teacher in all dimensions of theosophy, for sure. But I think one of the things that I got from her, as much as anything, is just her ability to teach the ABCs of being a human being.
Yeah.
And she was a master debater. She's the president of the debating club at Oxford. You couldn't touch her, you know. And I used to like to debate with her. It was a lot of fun. And you got that glint in her eye because she knew she was going to take you on. But basically, but the thing is that it just seems that she must have really understood all this metaphysics and so forth to be able to translate them into being able to teach these real ethical dimensions and true heart psychology of being a friend that she was able to transmit. And that's something that I've gotten from you, Carolyn, through the years too. So I really appreciate what you've done for us today.
Well, with that, I have another appointment to get downtown to, so I'm going to leave you now to contemplate what Mrs. Iyer has said. And you should have gotten readings. If you want the copy of the article, you didn't get one, I'm sure Jonathan could send you one, okay? So best to you all, and we'll see you next week.
Okay.
Thank you, Carolyn.
I'm Ms. Dave Ritz.